Good evening everyone and welcome to today's video. So we're continuing where we left off. We're going to go ahead and pin this 8.8 differential, also throwing in new axle studs, or wheel studs rather, and a couple other things. So let's check it out. So what we're doing is we are basically building this thing up. Now if you're not familiar with what pinning is, what we're going to be doing is literally drilling holes here. We're going to put four bolts here on the back side, there on the other side, all the way around. What that's going to make sure, that's what that's going to let us do is basically, instead of welding it, which you'd usually put a bead around here, unless you're able to put a bead around the outside and the inside, you can actually hurt it more than help it by basically, if you don't do it properly, it won't penetrate this metal because this is so much thicker than that without melting. Again, I'm not a welder, but this is stuff I've read and issues I do not want to deal with. Other issues are it heats this piece up and it heats that up. It breaks whatever steel that was there. It's no longer there. So then you're just relying on the welds. And a lot of the welded ones, if they do break, are going to break right along this weld seam. So this seems like a more viable alternative, to a little bit safer and also just as strong. We're basically going to pin it. So it's going to take a bolt. We're going to basically drill a hole. We're going to tap it. And then we're going to thread it in with some sealant and a lock washer pretty much. And it's going to be just long enough to penetrate this bar and no longer. Once that's done, so it's not going to interfere with the axles or anything, but it'll keep this from being able to rotate. I also have the Shea brace on here that runs across. We have our BMR lower control arm relocation brackets, and that's pretty much all we got going on the diff. On the inside, we got the Eden True Track, and these are stock axles are getting replaced whenever the new ones come in, which should be pretty soon here. So in the meantime, we're just going to go ahead and knock this thing out. So first up, what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pop off this cover right here. We're going to drain out the fluid and kind of go from there. Alright, so right off the bat, I hope this is just because it's essentially breaking and it's a fresh unit, but I'm a little concerned with the color of this stuff because when it went in, it was not this color. And I mean, the gear lash and everything is still fine. There's still no tooth wear or anything. So I'm really hoping I'm not about to freaking destroy another one of these things. Definitely something that's a little concerning. We'll see what the inside looks like when we pull this apart. Oh, good. There we go. So next up, I got to pop this lock ring out right here, and then we can pop the axles out and get this differential out. Took a few tries, but we got our snap ring out now. Set that off to the side for now. So we'll just pop those off. So down here with everything else. Now, next step, rotate this, and this piece should just pop right out. Like so. We got that out. Son of a bitch. There's a spacer in there that likes to do stuff like that. Looking like looks like we're pretty good. A little bit of rust apparently from when I was touching it when I put it in. That is actually pretty wild, even being in oil. But it looks like, I guess that color is just from breaking in the helical gear design. I do not see anywhere on the inside that I can tell anyway. So what we got to do next, I'll try and show you. Pretty much get the axles out of this thing. We're just going to push it in as far as she'll go. Little magnet right here will help us out. All right, so now that the C-clips are out, we're gonna go ahead and pop our axles out next. All right, and there you have it. So this is a stock 8.8 axle, nothing too crazy. And there you go. I'm curious. I mean, they seem pretty damn straight for being stock axles, taking 1/6/60 foot. I don't see, well, even for not taking that, like, I don't see any bends. It looks solid. You can tell anything, but I don't know, looking pretty good. So I'm gonna go ahead and actually, I'm gonna leave the other side in for now just because of the angle. I'm just gonna pop it out enough to get this differential out of here. So one axle. So now that our differential is out down there, we got to go ahead and pretty much you can see what's going on. So this is the inner axle tube, and it's actually pretty decent thickness. And what needs to happen is when you get a bolt that goes from the outside of this that penetrates just the surface of this thing. And the whole reason we needed to pull this out to do this is because I need to be able to stick a rag in there and clean out all the debris that is going to be stuck in there from when we do this. So making some definite progress. All right, so we got our axle off from this side, sitting over there right now. And one thing I want to go over, I did this on the other one already. So this right here is for your ABS. We got to get this this little guy off. So basically it's what registers against the speed sensor. And the easiest way I found to do this, there are a lot of proper tools. I don't have the proper tools. I do have a bearing separator kit though, so I'm going to show you how I got this thing off on the other side. And they're pretty stout, it's not going to hurt anything. They're not pressed on super hard, so let's knock that off real quick. There's also something I was curious about, but you can definitely tell that one axle is taller than the other. That works out. When you're ordering them online, they say one's 32 point something and one's 31 point something inches long. Sweet. So this one's driver's side and this one's passenger side. Mostly just telling that so I remember when I put this back together. What we're going to do next, so I've never drilled and tapped anything before, so I'm going to go ahead and test this out before I go full send. But these are the bolts I decided to go with. I went with so these are grade 8 bolts, which are just about as tough as you can get. And they are 1/2 by 13 thread, and then a 1 inch long. Don't know if I need to trim that down at all or not yet. Also grabbed some lock washers. I got some red Loctite and some Diff sealant inside that we're going to use as well. And what I'm planning on doing is I'm going to grab some test metal real quick, put it up in the clamp, and we're going to do a test thing. So I looked up the size according to this bolt to be able to drill and tap this hole. You need a 27/64 drill bit. So that's what I got. We're gonna use plenty of oil, do our test tap, see how it works out. If it works out where I think it'll be good, we'll go ahead and start working on the diff. This is our test piece. I didn't film this because I was just seeing how it worked, but piece left over from the shake kit that I didn't use, and went ahead and drilled it with that drill bit I was just talking about. Tapped it with the right size tap, and yeah, it works out. Definitely works out. So that is awesome. Now, time for the real sketch part. I'm about to put freaking 8 holes on my diff and start tapping everything. Definitely gonna do one at a time. I think this is reversible. If I really mess it up, like unreversibly, I should still be able to put something in there and freaking get it welded. However, hopefully it won't come to that.
lives past. We only see what we want to now. I long that it could last. I've seen the...
Alright, this has all the material that just came out, and I mean, you can see in there she's threaded. So that is super sketchy feeling. I do not like doing this. But you know what? It's in. Let's grab our bolt, see if she threads in properly. Be an awkward time for it not to thread in properly. And yeah, check it out, guys. So just like that, if we went in that far by hand, we can help it out just a little bit. This is a very weak impact, so no panics. And then on the inside, looks like it's protruding quite a bit. So we're gonna have to trim that guy up. You got the angle or the thing right there, so we'll trim it up. But one down, many to go. So I'm gonna go ahead and just knock out the rest of these myself. You saw how it's done. This is my first time using a tap and die set, and definitely glad it worked out. That would have been very sketchy. So solid keys. Use lots of lube. And take your time. So there we have it. One down. As I said, these are grade 8 bolts. Pretty spicy stuff. Alright, so we went ahead and put our lock washer in just to check depth and everything. And you can gotta get a cool view. This is what it looks like on the inside right there. So we're gonna have 4 of those guys down there. And I may not need to trim it in all honesty, but I'm gonna take off probably, from what I'm counting, just finger depth. I'm gonna mark this with a Sharpie, and then we're gonna trim this guy down to the right length, because I really don't want it protruding any more than it has to be, just to make sure we clear our axles and everything. Pretty solid, guys. I'm pretty happy with this. This is going easier than I thought it was going to. Went ahead and got all 4 of these things drilled in, and they are now tapped. And what I'm going to go ahead and do now is get all the bolts on this side set and done. This way, when I rotate this thing around, I don't need to try and do this the second time. So that's what we're going to go ahead and do next. As you can see, I mean, looking pretty good, to be honest. So I need to trim these bolts down and take off about 4 thread length, so about a 1/4 inch, maybe 1/2 inch. We'll see. And I'm just trying to get it nice and smooth to the inside of this wall, so there's no chance of dinging an axle or anything like that. That fits just about perfectly. I don't know if you can tell, but there's pretty much nothing protruding. That's just about flush. So we got to do with the rest of these things and get them all fit. My winning recipe that I'm going to try and use to seal this thing up properly without any issues. We're going to go ahead and hit some brake clean to remove any kind of oils from when I was cutting. We'll just so once that's out, should be good. Cut the stuff that flies in here because I don't want it to mix with the oil too much. Alright, so that should be all good and dried out now. And use some good old thread Loctite. Alright, so we have our thread or our bolt right here. My plan, we're going to go ahead and use a little bit of this silicone to make sure everything seals properly. We're going to put a tiny little bead over this regular Diff sealant, just silicone sealant right around this edge right here. Shouldn't take too much. And I, again, I don't foresee stuff being able to make it this high anyway, but it's still better to be safe than sorry in this kind of instance. Go ahead and set our washer down. And then put another little bead around the base of this bolt. Okay. And last, grab some red Loctite. Really fill up these threads. We do not want this thing to ever come out. Alrighty. Now that she's in, a little juice to get all the way to the bottom. Sweet, she's in. Feeling on the inside. Let me show you. It's in there, and as you, I don't know if you can tell, but there's literally almost zero protrusion, which is plenty of room for the axle to sit in the middle and hook up to the diff. And that's one down. So I'm going to throw the rest of these in real quick, and it should be it for this side. Then we got to flip it around and do the same thing to the other side. All four are in, so it's less about torque and more about making sure they're just snug in there. It's pretty good. Lock washers and Loctite should do their job. Looking down the tube, no protrusions really, just a little bit, but nothing crazy. So I think we're doing pretty solid. So now I got to flip this axle around. We got to do the same thing. 4 more holes, 4 more bolts, and it looks like I'm short 2 lock washers, so I got to go out and buy more. But it's coming together for sure. So just all wait on the actual axles to show up. Hopefully they'll be here Monday. But in the meantime, definitely got stuff to do. All right, and the last one is now tapped. So got all 4 right there. Just hit them with brake clean, so they should be drying out. And then these are 4 bolts that are going to go in there. Went through about 2.5 of these kits. My buddy had a kit that I was borrowing at first, and freaking this thing stripped out. And then I broke a second one when I bought this kit. Bought this, broke this. Took it back to Harbor Freight. They did another free exchange, and now I got this one. So it's always good. I misplaced. Oh, here it is. It's in the drill. Haha. I was trying to check something out. I did not tap this with a drill, but it turns out, I mean, quality seriously matters. This last set I got, this one's not bad, but some of these, the way they cut it out of their carbon steel, if you can tell on there, there's a little bit of a lip around some of these, like right in there. And that little lip was making this one real difficult to cut, so it was giving me problems. So, I mean, stuff matters, but they're all threaded. Everything looks good. Now we're going to go ahead and throw a Loctite on in here, silicone, put it back together, and this stage is going to be done. Okay, so that's how she's looking. Went ahead and hit it with some paint just because I really hate rusty stuff under my car, and I figured might as well. But all our bolts are in, everything's looking good there. Now what we're going to go ahead and do, just because we're putting new axles in it, we go ahead and pop in some new OEM seals. These are these guys right here, just like so. We're going to pop out the old ones and then pop in our new one. Should be a pretty easy. Okay. Easy was the word I was going to use. We'll see how these come out. Due to the amount of trial and error on getting that old one out, I decided just to do that off camera. But here's the old one right here. Probably just fine, but just to be safe, I want to make sure everything's good. So I went ahead and used the seal puller right here and pretty much just hooked it and started getting a bunch of different angles, and it eventually popped out. So there's the old one. New one's right here. We're just going to tap that in with a rubber mallet. Like so. She is now fully seated. That's our new seal. Should be good, nice solid, nice and solid for the new axles when they eventually come in. Just gonna pop the other side, and we should be done with the seals. And then all we're really waiting on after that is for these axles to come in. Now we gotta put the diff back into the back in the pumpkin here, bolt it down, clean out all the old metal shavings, and make sure it's clean, and then we should be good. So still got some metal shavings in here, obviously, and stuff like that we're gonna get out, but yeah, there you go. I definitely just put a nice palm print in my paint. Awesome. Making progress, guys, making progress. Starting to look like something cool. Just finished torquing it down, 95 foot-pounds on all 4 of them. So this guy is now good to go. And literally all we're waiting on are these axles to show up, and that's about it. So once they show up, we're gonna continue this video, and all I gotta do is install your ARP wheel studs to install, and then, actually, yeah, that's about it. Just the ARP wheel studs in there. Oh, and that these little reluctor ring things right here. Don't know exactly what they're called, ABS rings, and they just go on the end of each axle. that will be it. So definitely making some solid progress. Starting to look like a built diff, ladies and gents, and I'm pretty happy about it.